All right. Good morning. I'm pleased to call the February 2026 HBCU Advisory Council meeting to order. Dr. Smith, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Phillips,
Here.
Chancellor Bowie, Dr. Darrell Hutchins, Chancellor Pierre,
Here.
Dr. Donovan Segura,
Present.
Chancellor Washington,
He's here.
Mr. Ronald Carrere, Rep. Terry Landry,
Here.
Dr. Claire Norris,
Here.
President Lamel,
Present.
Senator Price,
Here.
Mr. McClanahan, Ms. Fiona James,
Present.
Ms. Jasmine Brown, Mr. Jason Hughes, Rep. LaFleur,
Present.
Rep. Young,
Here.
Rep. Jordan,
Here.
Rep. Newell,
Newell here.
Newell, Senator Jackson Andrews, Chancellor Gant,
Present.
Ms. Toy Whitney Williams,
Present.
Mr. Castile, Dr. Toya Bourne Senior, Dr. Larissa Littleton Stein. We have a forum.
There was a lot of names on that list, huh? It's a large task force. Well, good morning. Today I'm here on behalf of Dr. Reed, who unfortunately couldn't join us. And she asked that I share her sincere regrets, and she truly wished she could have been here. And, she wanted to share that this meeting is particularly meaningful to her because Grambling holds a special place in her family. I don't know if a lot of you knew, but her parents actually met here. Her father played on the football team under Coach Rob, and her father is a Grambling man. And so this campus has long been very special to her. That she often remarks that this is her second home since her father went on camera. I want to say thank you to Rep. Jordan for inviting us last month to be a part of the Black Caucus retreat. And we appreciate the opportunity, to be here with our extended family and have presentations and discussions that are centered on focusing and making sure that each of you are informed of what's going on in the higher education landscape. Because as you know, there's a lot going on. We have legislative sessions starting. Everybody had to adhere to a strict bill filing deadline. So, my heart, thoughts, and prayers go out to all the legislators here on this task force who are about to ramp up and get ready. And but this meeting here is going to be a real good one today because we have people talking about what's going on the national level, the federal level, and we will have a little family discussion of what's going to be going on the state level. And I would be remiss if I did not say thank you to President Lamel and his wonderful staff for hosting us here today. And I'm going to open it up to see if he has any words.
Well, thank you all for visiting North Louisiana and the campus of Grambling State University, the place where everybody is somebody. Brianna spoke about our wonderful team here at GSU, certainly a former Board of Regents student member, two-time SGA president. Mr. Darian Williams has been lead coordinator on the ground working with the team. And so just very thankful for the work that he contributes to our institution as our Deputy Chief of Staff, and certainly our students that you'll get to meet and convene with later throughout the day. And to our Legislative Black Caucus family, thank you all as well for making the journey, also choosing Grambling State University to celebrate Black history.
Thank you so much, President Lamel. And also members, you all have a copy of the meeting minutes from the October 26th, 2025 meeting of the HBCU Advisory Council. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
Second.
Motion by Rep. Landry, seconded by Chancellor Pierre. All in favor? All opposed? With that being said, the meeting minutes have been approved. Okay, well, we have something special. Like I mentioned today, we are going to hear what's going on, what trends are happening on the federal landscape. So what I would like to do is introduce Mr. Tom Harnish with SHIEL. I'm not sure if all of you are knowledgeable of what SHIEL is, but Louisiana participates in the State Higher Education Executive Officers Association. Commissioner Reed is a SHIEL. And with SHIEL, this partnership allows Louisiana to collaborate with other states, access national research, policy expertise, and share best practices related to student success, workforce participation, and alignment, and higher education policy overall. It helps to ensure that Louisiana remains connected to national trends while continuing to shape policies that benefit our students and our institutions and within our state. Particularly, and I had to give Tom a shout out. He is SHIEL's government relations lead, and he regularly updates our agency and convenes calls with other GO agencies across the country on all of the trends impacting higher education. So I definitely had to call on him to see if he could join us via Zoom. He is located in Washington, D.C., and so he's going to be sharing a lot of good information of what's going on Capitol Hill. So with that, I want to welcome Tom and switch over to him on Zoom.
Right. Well, thank you, Brianna. Can you hear me?
Yes, he
Yes.
can.
Okay, well, thank you for the invitation. Great to be with the Louisiana Board of Regents and the HBCU Advisory Council. I have to say, I had to leave a meeting with Commissioner Reed, so she's up here with us right now in DC, a meeting on development, all the good work that Louisiana is doing on developmental education. So good to be with you all. I was just down in Louisiana a few months ago, and the hospitality that you guys showed to me and the great food. And then I got a tour of Tiger Stadium and everything like that. So it's a lot of fun. Always love coming down to Louisiana and seeing everyone down there. So it's a privilege to be with you today. I do want to talk a little bit about what's going on at the federal level, and especially as it relates to HBCUs. So if I could just share my screen right now. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'd like to talk for about 15 minutes about what's going on at the federal level and how it affects HBCUs, but also welcome your questions because, again, there's so much going on right now, so much in the news, and these do definitely have these decisions definitely have impacts on HBCUs. And then I would also just say this, using your voice. This is a theme that I would just say, using your voice. Louisiana is really in the catbird seat as far as political power in Washington. You have the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader, and you have the chair of the Senate Education Committee with Senator Cassidy. So Louisiana has a outsized voice right now on federal policy, and so just encourage you in your roles at campuses, at the system office, and elsewhere in state government to really use your voices in order to shape policy here in Washington. So with that, I will get right into it. So a few things I'd like to talk about. First one I'm going to talk about is money and the appropriations that bills that just passed and what that means for our students and what it means for our HBCUs. I do want to talk about the big beautiful bill that passed last summer and some of the changes that are in there that could affect students attending HBCUs, but just students broadly as well. And I'll talk briefly about accreditation and student loans, and then again, happy to talk about any of the issues that you'd like to talk about. So with that, I'm going to get right into it. So just a quick overview of where we are at right now with federal funding. And other key areas for HBCUs. So one is that Title III funding is stable right now for our HBCUs, but I do want to talk about broader political vulnerabilities. The big one, and this is sort of the big one in the room right now is this Pell shortfall. And I do want to talk about that just because so many students, particularly at HBCUs, are on Pell grants. And so changes to the Pell program could affect them. The MSI restructuring and how that would affect HBCUs. HBCUs are considered separate from MSIs, but we'll talk more about that. Loan caps and then cohort default rates. So we just finally, the federal budget was due on October 1. We had a long shutdown, if you remember. We had some continuing resolutions. So where we are at right now with federal appropriations. So there's 12 bills that fund the federal government. We are done with 11 of them. The only one that we're not done with is Department of Homeland Security. So that is currently in shutdown as they negotiate guardrails and issues related to immigration enforcement. Overall, what did funding look like for Pell Grants and for funding for HBCUs? The word I would use would be level funded or flat. That's where we're at right now. Pell Grants have been flat funded for the last 4 years, so they are going to be maxed out at $73.95. Work Study, SEOG, TRIO, the Gear Up program. Most of the programs that we rely upon in higher education have been flat funded. So we push back on calls from the Trump administration to make deep cuts, and we ultimately got back to level funding in the final bill. So it's a win from that perspective, is that we don't have to take on some of the cuts that were proposed last year. So other areas, just greater oversight for the Department of Education, interagency agreements. I'll talk more about that, and then I'll talk about flexibility for moving funding. So the funding for HBCUs there's a modest increase in there. Right now, this is for the Strengthening HBCU program that historically has been administered through the U.S. Department of Education. Right now, due to the interagency agreements from the Trump administration, it will be administered. It's part of the group that would be administered by the U.S. Department of Labor. So how this is working is that the Department of Education is still overseeing the program, but the Department of Labor is administering the programs right now. So over half of the funding overall at the Department of Education is actually now being administered by other federal agencies. So, and that's part again about the Trump administration and their efforts to they want to close down the Department of Education. They cannot do that by law. So they're having other agencies do the work of the Department of Education while the Department of Education oversees it. So that's kind of the middle ground that they've done. You probably heard in the news about MSI funding for minority serving institutions. And how this is all going down is HBCUs and TCUs are not included in this discussion about race-based programs. And so what I mean by that is that HBCUs and TCUs have a historical designation in federal law. The other minority serving institutions, Hispanic serving institutions, Native American serving non-tribal institutions, Asian American serving institutions, those all have a quota as far as the number of students, the percentage of students that you have to have at a campus to be considered in that category. Okay. HBCUs and TCUs don't have that, but those do. Why that matters is because the administration has said, because of the Supreme Court decision a few years ago, that they don't think that those quotas, as far as having a base number of students for those programs, is legal. So they actually took discretionary money last year that was set aside for those programs and gave it to other programs such as HBCUs, TCUs, and others. But this is an area that is unsettled right now. So it does not directly affect HBCUs and TCUs. It could affect predominantly Black institutions, which is a minority serving designation. So there are some PBIs in the state of Louisiana. So that is where we are at when they talk about MSI program funding. It does not directly affect HBCUs, but it affects those other designations. Okay. And then I already talked about the Department of Education is the Department of Education is administering only not 57% funding.
Tom, one of our state reps has a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Go back for me, just two questions and forgive me with something. So 2 questions. TCUs, I'm assuming aren't tribal colleges?
Tribal colleges, yep.
You are tribal because you were using both sides, you know. What predominantly Black institutions do we have in Louisiana?
I believe that would affect those community colleges. So those are, and I can send along the matrix of the eligibility, but I believe based on federal law that those institutions have to have a minimum of 40% African American students to be considered a PBI. There's some other parts of the law as well, but that's the base number. So anything that's related to a quota like that, is vulnerable to have their money shifted to other programs.
All right, so I guess, so that means that money would go from those technical colleges or, to HBCU, so is that the movement or not?
Yep. So for those other designations, last year they moved it to HBCUs, TCUs, and some other priorities within the administration. This year, it's unclear about what direction they're going to go, but they could take the money and put it into a program called SIP, which is called Strengthening Institutions. And what that means is that that's a program where institutions would compete for the funds, but it would be based on income and resources, and race would not be a factor. So that's a more of an income-based designation that the money could be shifted over to. It's unclear about what the administration is going to do this year, but that is potentially one route that they could go.
So Tom, just to make sure I got this correct, last year with the Big Beautiful Bill, they took the money from the MSI programs, they shifted it to the HBCUs, TCUs, but not PBIs. And the upcoming fiscal year, it's not sure where they're gonna put it, and they may put it in that SIP program you just mentioned, which
Yep.
would cover everything.
Yep, which is based on income and resources. So that is for institutions serving a lot of lower income students. And they did move it out. It was not part of the Big Beautiful Bill. It was part of their administration of the last appropriations bill. But again, it's unclear about what direction they're going to go next. But yes, PBIs are considered a minority serving institution designation.
So last year was a one-time appropriation.
Yep,
Or-
last year was a one-time appropriation, and then this year we're going to have to see about how they go about it.
Gotcha.
And one more thing is I'm seeing competition. So is this a grant, or you're just doing a general application to apply for the SIP money?
We're going to have to see about how they go about structuring that. It could be a competition. I'm not exactly sure about how they could go about that. Yep. Yep.
Sorry, we're about to say something else, Tom?
Oh, no, that's about it, but I can try to find more information about what's next for those programs. But my overarching comment is just that we'll be watching about PBIs in particular, and how their funding could change in the year ahead.
All right, thanks, Tom. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, no, we're good. So this is just, again, what I talked about, the middle ground is that they can't close the Department of Education, but so they're taking the programs and they're moving them over to other federal agencies through these agreements. And but they're still overseeing the programs. So, and most of the Department of Education programs that I mentioned are going to be distributed through the Department of Labor. So this is something that the administration has been going forward with, and there is some guardrails in the appropriations bill about how they can go about it. They want to have them check in with Congress and the like, but they are still going through with these agreements to have other federal agencies administer Department of Education programs. And so if we look at the overall funding for the Department of Ed right now, just wanted to be clear, it's been flat for several years, right at about $79 billion. Okay, so that's, and you can see here, the president called for deep cuts. The Senate, which has to work in a bipartisan way because they got to get 60 senators to come along. So that means Democrats and Republicans have to work together. They basically provided flat funding. The House is majority rule, so that called for deep cuts. And so what they ended up is basically going with the Senate's approach, which would flatline funding. Okay, and then this is Pell Grants have been, it's the cost of college keeps going up. Pell Grants have been flat for several years now, as I mentioned, right around $73.95 for the maximum Pell Grant. And why this matters now, particularly for students at HBCUs, Congress is going to have to provide 16.9 billion more than it appropriate for FY 26 in order to keep the maximum Pell Grant frozen. So they are looking at a Pell Grant shortfall. Why are we looking at a Pell Grant shortfall right now? Well, we have a lot more students in the system because we simplified the Pell Grant form. So we're kind of a victim of our own success. More students can fill out the form. It's easier to fill out now. You can get it done in 15 minutes or so. But with that and some changes to the eligibility formulas, there's just more students in the system. So that's going to provide additional costs. The economy also, when people can't get jobs, more of them go back to school. And then there's also a new program for Workforce Pell that is coming online right now that could add costs to the program. So we are looking over the next decade or so as red ink in the Pell Grant program as far as the eye can see. And so Congress is going to have to make a decision in the next few years about, okay, are we going to cut eligibility for Pell? Are we going to lower the maximum award? Traditionally, they don't do that, but that's one way. Or are they going to provide these funding patches in order to keep the program solvent? And so that we're going to be watching that closely and just encourage you to reach out to your members of Congress, to your senators, and just talk about how important the Pell Grant is for your college or university. Any questions on Pell? Okay. I know I'm not the bearer of good news right now, but I did want to flag the Pell Grant program, and this was just a screenshot from our friends at the PNPI about the number of HBCU students are on Pell. So it's about 2 in 3 HBCU students have received Pell Grants. So this is a big deal, of course, to the HBCU community. Okay, and then this is just showing the red ink that we're looking at with the Pell Grant program. Okay. So with that, unless there are any other questions on appropriations, can I can go over and talk about the big, beautiful bill?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Going back to the slide, I think where you said 57% of what is the allocation, appropriation is being used, and the rest of the money is being, this one, yes. And you said the Department of Education is asking other agencies they have agreements with to disperse their funds to schools. Did I understand that properly?
Yes, ma'am.
So will those departments have the same requirements for the spending of the money that may be in place now with the Department of Education?
That's my understanding. Is just that it's going to be the same. It's just that it's just going to be administered by someone else. Because those are the law, the underlying law hasn't changed. It's just who is administering the law has changed. But
these other departments right now aren't restricted or don't have restrictions that the Department of Education has on this, how the money is spent from the people that they normally give money to. So if the Department of Labor or Interior is giving money, would they have requirements that the schools they're giving money to are accredited? If there's a certain teacher-student ratio that's required by the Department of Ed, would the Department of State and Labor require the same thing? Okay.
That's yes. I mean the underlying in following this is that they still have to follow the rules of the program. It's just that the administration of it is going to change. So that's what I've seen. It's just that, and some of the grant applications and the underlying program requirements aren't going to change, but some of the user interfaces as far as grant applications go, those could change, but the underlying requirements of the law have not changed.
Okay, so these requirements are in statute, not just in policy?
Yep.
Okay. We're gonna see. Thank you.
You go ahead, Tom.
Okay, all right. So I do want to talk about the big, beautiful bill. If we move forward, So this is gonna be a big change for those students that are pursuing graduate education. Okay, and so undergraduate loans are not going to change. Graduate loans are going to change. And basically, what we had before was a program called Grad Plus, where you could take out loans to go to graduate school up to the cost of attendance. And Congress has basically come in and said, we're going to end that. And in its place, we're going to put, you're either going to be in one of two buckets. You're going to be in the non-professional program bucket, or you're going to be in the professional program bucket. If you're in the non-professional program bucket, you're going to be able to take out federal loans of up to $20,500 a year, and it's going to be capped out at $100K. If you're in the professional program bucket, it's going to be capped out at $50K, and you're going to have up to $200,000 lifetime. Okay. And then they put new restrictions on the Parent Plus loan program as well. So that is a sea change for students that are pursuing graduate education that's going to start on July 1 of this year. There is a clause for those that are currently in the system that they can play by the existing rules until their program is over. But for those that are entering the system starting in July, they're going to pursue graduate education, and they're going to be with federal loans. If they're pursuing a non-professional program or professional program, there's going to be different rules of the road. Okay. And so you can see here, this is a screenshot of these changes. So go ahead. Is there a question?
Actually, go back to the last slide.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you give a couple of examples of what's considered as a non-professional program? I know that it was a big frenzy on social media as to what categories of professions, because I think I remember some nursing and medical professions. And then number two, what was the criteria, or are you aware of the criteria that they used to deem it as a non-professional program?
Great question, and that's my next slide. So yeah, how do you define professional versus a non-professional program? And so they punted that over to the negotiated rulemaking committee at the Department of Education. So hopefully, okay. So what happens here is we have negotiators that represent different parts of higher education. So SHIO has a seat at the table. Someone representing our community. 2 years, 4 years, for-profits, private colleges, different constituencies. There's a student seat as well. And so they negotiate rules. And one of the key questions is who gets put in the professional bucket versus who gets put in the non-professional bucket. And of course, there's a lot of jockeying with different programs and different associations out there. But the department was pretty tight on what they wanted to be included as professional programs. So you see here the list of programs. This is based on a definition that's been in federal law for a while. And they said basically medicine, pharmacy, dentistry, et cetera, those are considered professional programs. And then everything else with graduate education is considered a non-professional program.
So the Board of Education decided that the doctorate in education wasn't a professional program?
It was not, it's not on the list, no. So the Doctor of Education would be maxed out at $20,500 a year.
Mhm.
So and so there was a lot of pushback as Brianna noted online and the like from nurses who were particularly upset about this, physical therapists, social workers, et cetera, that were considered in the non-professional bucket. Right now, so they agreed and they reached consensus on this. So right now, they take that consensus language and it's now in the Federal Register. And you can send a comment to the Department of Education through March 2nd. And just say, hey, I agree with this, I don't agree with this, et cetera. But this is what we have right now as far as the future of these programs. I would say also, too, that there are several pieces of legislation on Capitol Hill that basically would tell the department, hey, we think you should expand the number of professional programs. There's bipartisan legislation, and that would extend it to a whole range of other programs as well. So just wanted to flag that for you, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
What was the immediate response from the department when they immediately got pushed back? I think I was reading that they were trying to use this as a way to prevent students from taking out too many loans. I just that's kind of what I read, but I wanted to know what was the administration's response to pushback.
So the administration's response to pushback was, look, the spirit of the law is that we have too big of a portfolio on graduate student loans, and many of these loans we don't think are going to be paid back. So upwards of half of the federal loan upwards of half of the federal loan portfolio is actually graduate education, but the percentage of students in graduate education is more like 15%. So it's an outsized part of the loan program, and they were looking at some professions and being like, these programs, taking out $130,000 at some programs for like social work. We just don't see this as a value, so we want to cap the amount of federal student loans. So, and they also felt that with the unlimited loans in the Graduate Plus program, that it was fueling tuition inflation. So the administration was pretty tight, and they said, we just want to stick tight to these programs that are listed in federal regulation about what's considered professional. But again, they've received a lot of pushback from nurses and physical therapists and others trying to get into that professional bucket.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep, thank you. Other questions about this? I know I'm running over time, but happy to answer any questions.
I got any more questions? Do you have a few more slides, Tom?
Yep, I have like 2 or 3 more slides, if that's okay. Just finish up here. So student loan defaults are on the rise. So if you remember during the pandemic, President Trump and then President Biden said, we're going to do a repayment pause on student loans. And then President Biden said, ended that and said, we're going to, do a grace period to get folks back online as far as repaying those loans. That grace period is done. The COVID era repayment pause is done. And now folks have to repay their student loans. And why this matters for institutions is that if your institutional cohort default rate is above 40% in a year, your institution can lose access to federal student aid. If it's over 30% for 3 years, you can lose access to federal student aid. So the Department of Education is reaching out to institutions saying, hey, we got to help borrowers understand what their repayment obligations are. And then they've also shared information to institutions about, hey, this is what your default rate is, and if you don't get this in line, you could jeopardize your access to federal student aid. So, any questions on student loan defaults?
Just quickly, Tom,
Yeah.
I think that bullet around the cohort default, there was some predictive analytics that showed just kind of a trend, and PBIs and HBCUs certainly were hovering around that upward default rate. Do you think that they are going to stick to this criteria? And if so, any thoughts around how we strategically start to address this? Because there's little institutional control.
Right.
Once the students have actually graduated from the institution.
Yeah. The administration has said that they're going to enforce the law on this. Obviously, I've never seen, and they have, the Department of Education has cut off federal student aid to some institutions in the past, but it's for a small for-profit college or a barber college or something like that. I have not seen any evidence, at least in the past, about them cutting off funding to an institution. But that always is, it could happen. So that's why they're reaching out to institutions and saying, do whatever you can to help borrowers understand what their repayment obligations are.
From a governance perspective, where is this data?
Yep. I'm happy to send it. The Department of Education just put it out the other day. I'm happy to send it to Brianna after we're done here.
Is there a way for system offices to track this
Yep.
or regions? Okay.
Yep. Yep, they can track it, and the department has been refreshing the information on this. But they have a spreadsheet that's broken down by state, by institution, and what the rates are across the country.
One quick question for you, Tom.
Yep.
Do they break it down by student? And the second question is, does this become an unfunded mandate? Because I mean, do colleges, I mean, I don't know how you collect on, to the president's point, I don't know how you collect or force collection upon a student who has already graduated, but
Right.
you almost gotta give them collection departments at least to try to reach out to the students and encourage them to pay.
Right.
So who pays for that extra manpower?
Yeah, I think they're just saying, institutions do what you can in order to do this, in order to bring down those rates and let people know about their repayment obligations. But as far as like new resources or anything like that, I haven't seen that. But I would also say that the information that I've seen from the department, the unit of analysis they're using is the institution.
All
So
right.
you can go through and sort the spreadsheet by what your institution is, and you can see other institutions in the state.
So I guess the question is, then who does the institution even know who to call?
Exactly.
Mhm.
If you don't have it broken down by students, I mean, you can tell me I got a 30% or 40% default rate, but if I don't know 40% were in default, how do I even, I mean, who am I encouraging?
Right. The information that I've seen is at the institutional level. And I'd have to check, you'd have to check with your financial aid office and other folks about different strategies as far as engaging with borrowers and letting them know about their obligations.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Okay. Well, I'll just finish up here unless there are any other questions about cohort default rates.
Tom, how does SHIO define cohort? For example, if there's a situation where a student has attended multiple institutions, how would we know which institution will be liable if a student moves into default?
Oh, great question. SHIO has not, we don't have a definition on that. The federal government has a definition of that, and I can get back to you on the precise definition of how they define cohort default rates. Because you're right, there's a lot of swirling with the students going to different institutions and what institution is ultimately held accountable on that. Yep.
Thank you.
You bet.
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, so I just want to finish up here. I talked earlier about the negotiated rulemaking, and the Trump administration is starting a new negotiated rulemaking. This time it's on accreditation. And what their goals are on accreditation is, one, they want to lower the barriers of entry to new accreditors. So they'd like to see more accreditors in the space. They would like to streamline reviews. And I've talked with members of the administration, and they said, we want to get away from box checking, and we want to get away from bureaucracy. We want to get away from administrative burden. We really want accreditors to focus on institutional quality. So deregulation, more accreditors in the system, having institutions be able to switch easily across accreditors is something that they've prioritized. They do want to focus on student outcomes. They've flagged anything related to DEI standards that they want to remove as they update accreditation. Merit, they say they prohibit discrimination based on immutable characteristics. And then on regional designations, there are no regional accreditors anymore. I know, of course, SACS is the legacy accreditor for the South, but that of course SACS is still there. It does accredit a lot of institutions, but the concept of an accreditor just designated for a particular region is now gone. And so institutions can choose among a whole range of different accreditors. They also have focused on separating accreditors from trade associations, so that's specialized accrediting, as well as reforming transfer of credit policies. So this is just some of the goals, some of the ideas that they've laid out. We don't know exactly what the language is going to look like and how who's going to be selected for the committee. We've put forth a person that we think would be great for the committee, but this is what they're looking at as far as next steps on accreditation. Okay. All right. Unless there are any questions, again, this is just some of the goals that they're having for accreditation. And then they've also made investments in accreditation. So you kind of read the tea leaves as far as what their goals are, encouraging competition, moving around to different accreditors, using AI to streamline the accreditation review process, focusing on measurable outcomes. So these are some of the investments that they've made, the Trump administration has made in accreditation. Okay. And then there's also they're also scrutinizing some of the partnerships on student voting as well. There's a center at Tufts University that specializes in student voting. And there's concerns from the administration about potential FERPA violations with that. So they are scrutinizing some of the partnerships on student voting, and we'll just gonna have to see how that plays out.
Tom, quick question on that before I
Yep.
let you know. When you say scrutinizing student voting, can you go back to that last slide?
Yep.
Is it more so the partnership?
Partnerships. Yep.
Like, for example, if a campus wanted to partner with the NAACP local chapter, or if not more so much as having HBCUs, which I think some are designated as actual voting sites, but it's looking at who they're partnering with.
The partnership right now, the only partnership that I've seen that's received scrutiny is the one that Tufts University leads, the NSLVE, and that's involving using the NSLVE data. So I think it's a data related issue, and if that data violates the FERPA law. Beyond that, I'm not sure, anything related to data and student privacy, of course, is always an issue, but that's just one thing that the administration has flagged thus far. But as far as other partnerships go, I haven't seen any scrutiny beyond that.
Are they opening an OCR investigation on that?
They have opened they are looking and scrutinizing the NSLV data. Yes. And so they are, and I'm happy to send more information along to you about that. So for institutions that are involved with that effort.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Yep. Okay, well, so just to finish up, so the key issues that I, just would flag going forward: Pell Grant volatility, the cohort default rates, the professional program loan caps, as well as changes to the accreditation space. So with that, I do provide a policy email if folks are interested in subscribing. I can send that along to Brianna. But with that, happy to answer any other questions or if you have them, or anything that I didn't cover.
Thanks, Tom. I'm pretty sure that a couple of them, whenever the next time they go to DC, gonna be knocking on your door and questions at the meeting. So you presented some really good information. So I really appreciate you for that, Tom.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Always great part. Thanks, Tom. All right, y'all. So Tom gave y'all a lot of information, a lot of which I will email. I already have a slide deck, but it seems like I'm going to be compiling some links and some other things and some data points. So I'll make sure to get that to y'all upon conclusion of the meeting. But to move us along and to do a time check, because I was told that y'all have to be in the black and gold room at about 11:35 for luncheon. This is what I'm going to do. With your permission, I'm going to ask to go maybe 10 minutes over, but I'm still get y'all there on time. I want to make sure that I give Dr. Elston his time there because he has some really good information. Like I said, it's going to be a real good informative session today. But as you all may know or may not know, Regents also partners with Complete College America. This is a national nonprofit organization focused on increasing college completion and improving student success. And through CCA's work, they work with systems and institutions to implement evidence-based practices to help move these strategies forward, so to make sure that our students get the degrees and their credentials are valued. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Daniel Elston to make his presentation. Dr. Elston, what was yours?
Sounds good. Thank you. How's everyone doing today?
Doing good.
Good. It feels good to be here in person versus virtual. So I was listening to Tom, and Tom is a good colleague, and absolutely, I will definitely use this. Testing. There we go. It just took a second. What I was sharing was that Complete College America works very closely with SHIOs across the country, as well as with a number of institutions, states, and systems. And I'm just happy to be here in person because I'm tired of all these Zoom meetings, and so it just feels good to be here in person. A couple of things. First, it feels good to be in Louisiana for a few different reasons. I've been with Complete College America now for 11 years. My first week on the job, I was supposed to be supporting our president and founder, who was giving a speech to the Board of Regents. Unfortunately, he was not able to make it because his plane flight had some kind of issues. And so my first week on the job, I actually had to speak in front of the Board of Regents and talk about the experience, the college completion agenda and movement. And it was a great conversation around what does it mean for an HBCU student to now be in the space of policy, practice, and perspectives. I will also say that I have a 17-year-old son who is a senior in high school who is making some college choices. He's been accepted to Southern as well as Xavier, so you might see me down here a whole lot. So we're trying to make some decisions around this burgeoning mechanical engineer. But he said, come on, Southern. Hello. Somebody kind of come up with an aid package, but that's a different conversation.
You said right on the same rope with you.
We can work that. Don't worry about that.
No. Well, without being, too lengthy, what I enjoyed about Tom's presentation and where I think he can lead us to is a larger conversation around what are institutions and states and systems experiencing, and how do we ensure that the conversation moves beyond where the ball is to where the ball is going to be going. And I know that, I don't envy many of you who are leading institutions right now because you are facing some significant political headwinds. I get that. And at the same time, we have to figure out what do we do to ensure that our institutions survive for the next 100, 150 years. And there are a lot of things that are taking place. And so some of the things that I'm going to hit on, I feel like Tom hit on a little earlier. So I'll be quick with it. My goal is to just really give you about 5 key trends that we're seeing, with particular focus on 2 that I think are pretty significant right now, that are kind of in that where the ball is going to be conversation. For those of you who don't have familiarity with Complete College America, I'll be real quick with this. Our goal is to turn the mirror on ourselves and ensure that we are creating better institutions for the students that we serve. I was literally at a meeting with a very highly selective HBCU. I'm not going to name who they are. And someone in that team said, well, what can we do to get better students? And I was like, that's not the way to think about this. The goal is to ensure the students who show up at your doorstep are the students who show up. Our job is to ensure that we can do a better job by them. And the reality is, although we know that financial aid is a huge issue, the political environment around student loans, all these things are key. The main thing that we find over and over again through our research is that most students who don't return back to our institutions are doing so because they don't feel like the environment is designed for them to succeed. which gives us an opportunity to do some things better. So that's the work that we do. If you have not worked with us before, we put out a lot of publications, a lot of research around what's taking place. We have a large alliance, which represents about 86% of public colleges and universities, representing about 2 million students. When we started, we said we'd be a success if we could get maybe 5 to 10 governors to commit to a completion agenda. If you see the map over there on the right, we're pretty much full with a few exceptions. And we do a lot of institutional transformation work where we're working with institutions to figure out how they implement these strategies at scale. I am the child of a former director of an upper bound program. And when I started doing this work on that national advocacy space, the thing that stood out to me was if you have programs like TRIO and Upper Bound and all these other things that do really good work for 30 students, what would that look like if our structure was designed for every student to have that experience? So that's what CCA does. Impact-wise, we're making some movement nationally, some increases in national attainment, all these things, you probably are aware of, and I've already shown you the map. But we've got some room to grow. And so let's jump right on into what are we looking like with regard to HBCUs right now? Let's just look at the blue line on the top. Retention rates. First year retention rates, that's the standard IPEDS data that's collected. We have made a little bit of movement at HBCUs, and that's all HBCUs, publics and privates. I would say if you did a little bit of disaggregation, there's a different conversation between the private institutions as well as the public HBCUs. The public HBCUs, as a result of being state affiliated, had to move the needle as a result of performance-based funding, completion-based funding, et cetera. Many of our private institutions did not have those same levers of push and are probably considerably behind in these levels. So main thing though here is that the retention rates have not really changed dramatically. Now, when you look at on-time graduation rates, and when I say on-time graduation rates, we are not talking about the IPEDS 150% rates. No, none of our parents, grandmamas, aunties, folks who drop their kids off at our institutions, 4-year institutions or 2-year institutions, are wanting you to hear that we're looking to come back to graduation in 6 years. They're expecting a 4-year degree to be 4 years, a 2-year degree to be 2 years. So we look at those on-time graduation rates, which is 100%. So for 4-year institutions, we have moved the needle. But if that average is 23%, that is always going to be a headwind. And honestly, it is one of those data points that that different politicians use to evaluate whether we are valuable or not. We know that there's a lot of reasons why these numbers are where they are. I'm just being honest and having an honest dialogue with you around what we got to do to move that needle, because it is going to be an important part of the political climate, and definitely over the next 3 years.
Excuse me.
Yes, please.
In your talking point on the on-time graduation rates, do you consider students who either change their majors or add a dual major that might set them back to a 6-year graduation as opposed to 4?
For this particular data, what we're looking at is the first-time, full-time cohort. It doesn't necessarily take into consideration changes of majors, et cetera.
Okay. Or what about students that change institutions and some of the classes they took at the first one don't transfer to the second? Is that considered?
It does capture those students.
Oh,
okay.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, where we've been hitting this work has really been around what do students experience at colleges and universities. And we've been calling them our pillars of transformation. I'm not going to go into all the strategies that are up here on the screen. But what we found is that institutions that do this well really have kind of found 4 core buckets of the student experience that help to design a comprehensive experience. How do you ensure students have a sense of purpose, know where they're going? You have to have a structure. What does the map look like? Even if that map is designed for part-time students that periodically might need to stop out, how do you get them back on track? Obviously, Louisiana is well known for the momentum metrics. How do we ensure that all those things that tend to be hurdles in the process are alleviated? And then knowing that students sometimes get off track, how do we ensure that those academic supports are in place, academic coaching, et cetera. So I'm gonna stop right there. Let me tell you what the 5 biggest trends that we have been seeing right now are related to the national agenda. And I think Tom hit on a couple of these, so I'm gonna be kind of quick with the first 3, and then I'm gonna spend a little bit of time on the last 2, and then just open up the floor for some dialogue. First trend, very simple. You know it all too well. The federal policy agenda has shifted, and the stakes are real for HBCUs. People ask, so what does this mean for us? It means we're dealing with issues of operating revenue, we're dealing with credential recognition, we're dealing with issues of competitive positioning, bottom line. So you know that as a result of all the things that you've already heard. Second thing is that credential attainment is becoming and has become a state competitiveness issue. Every time we go into a conversation with the state, with the governor, with a governor's policy advisor, they want to know how they rank in comparison to their peer institutions, their within their geography, et cetera. And so I think on the good side, I feel like there's some really good news coming out of Louisiana. Obviously, the Momentum Summit that you had, Tristan Denley shared, recent work around the state being ahead of pace for the 2030 goal as far as credential attainment. I guess the question for me is, are HBCUs getting their proportionate share of that progress? And are you positioned to drive the final miles of that 60% and beyond? Third trend, the enrollment pressures that we are dealing with right now are not going away. They are not. I think people sometimes think that, it'll just be a new president or a new governor that will change this. The demographic shift is real. And the institutions winning enrollment right now are the ones that can clearly articulate what is it that our graduates earn, what do they do, and what do they become? Full stop. That is the conversation piece that's taking place. I will also say that being able to track that data is a rarity. In the state of Louisiana, Louisiana is not a state that's a part of the post-secondary data partnership. And some states have better data collection systems than others. But you have to be able to track your data across institutions, and not only across institutions, but across states, especially in environments where you see an outflow of talent. You want to know where they're going to be able to figure out why they are leaving the state. And very few states are able to do that. And so that is a national imperative. I think there are going to be some national conversations around data collection. The biggest concern for folks is, what do you do with that data once you have it? And we don't want it to be used to further dismiss the value of HBCUs and institutions that are serving our most minoritized populations. So those are the 3 big pieces. The 4th trend that I want to share with you is one around workforce alignment is the new accountability standard. That's not a surprise to many of you, but what does this credential lead to is the conversation that we're having most frequently with policy leaders and state leaders. The opportunity in that is that for most of these strategies that we're talking about, and especially related to workforce, it speaks the language of economic mobility, of workforce development, and institutional accountability, which tend to resonate across party lines. And so if you can figure out how that's kind of playing out into your academic maps, into the sense of purpose, it's going to be really important as we continue to move on. And the last trend, the 5th trend that I want to kind of throw out there, sounds just like my alarm. The 4th trend, and this is so interesting because I flew into Monroe, and I was sitting next to a young lady on the plane, and she had on a suit, and she asked me, "Are you here, to be a part of the Meta project?" And I was like, I didn't even know what was going on. And then in my hotel, I saw a bunch of folks from AT&T and all this other folks. They were like a whole team of individuals are there. And so the bottom line is, AI is reshaping what college ready and job ready means. It is changing employer expectations faster than most institutions can adapt the curriculum. And I'm just being very candid with that. And so the programs who graduate or don't graduate, students with competencies in AI are gonna be behind before they even start. And that is part of that larger conversation around workforce alignment. I do think there's an opportunity here because AI also creates a kind of a competitive equalization opportunity. There are a number of ways, and I'm happy to talk about them, where we're seeing AI increase efficiency across institutions. And so I'm gonna stop there with those kind of big landscape, national landscape kind of pieces. I'm happy to share what we're seeing other states do. We're happy to share what's going well, where are we seeing gaps, and I'm also happy to dig a little bit further into those conversations around workforce alignment as well as AI. I do want to share a couple of quick things though, because I talked about AI and workforce alignment. I want to share a couple of very short slides. One on an effort that we are moving forward around called Purpose First. And we put out a recent publication called College on Purpose. And the bottom line is that we've got to figure out a better way to weave the desired outcomes of students into our larger curriculum and structure. What I will tell you nationally is that very few institutions do this way. Most folks have a career center, they have larger conversations about, what are the workforce demands for our state, but the institutions are not structurally designed to do any of that. And so I'm just gonna, quickly, I'm not even gonna go through this. I'm gonna go directly to what would an ideal student experience look like in that. And it's how are you doing interest assessments early on in the process? We've actually seen some institutions, people make decisions on what they want to major in, and what they want to major in the most uninformed ways. I am from Los Angeles, California. I was good I excelled in water sports and I was good in science. Thus, I should be a what? A marine biologist. That was the only connection I could make between those two things. And it wasn't until an academic advisor actually said, you should do an internship in Mississippi with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And when I did it, I was like, I do not want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I'm sharing that with you because what we're seeing now is institutions that are doing some of these interest assessments are finding that 25% of their students are changing their major before they get started because they didn't even know what it was. Everybody knows what a nurse is, everybody knows what a doctor is. Do you know what a degree in mechatronics can do for you? Do you know what the job demand looks like? And so there are a number of pieces here that need to happen in a more well-designed way, and very few institutions are doing it. On the work related to AI, I'm just going to quickly show you, these are the things that institutions are starting to think about. Obviously on the far right, how do you accelerate and better enable those strategies that I were talking about related to purpose, structure, momentum, and support. But the bigger conversations are what kind of dashboards can be created? How do we handle professional development? How quickly can we use this to track connect our data, to evaluate time on task, to be able to see a comprehensive picture of how all the things that we know impact student success are aligning with one another. And so this, I think, is a game changer for institutions of higher education. Most institutions are still just saying, go on ChatGPT and start to try some things, but they have not built out a firm structure. We had a project a couple of years ago on HBCU digital learning infrastructure. And what came out of that was this matrix. I'll make sure that you have access to the publication. But I love this matrix because it helps institutions realize that it's not just the tools themselves. I think everybody thinks that if you have an AI tool, it's going to solve the problem. If you're not clear around what your vision is, how you're going to deal with it with regard to change management, do you have the right IT infrastructure? What is it going to look like to get rid of some existing tech tools and integrate them into AI? How do you train the staff and the students to use them? And then ultimately, how does it help in student support, culture, and engagement? So I just wanted to kind of give you that just to be a little bit more practical in what these things might look like. But I'm happy to go ahead and jump into some conversation around what we're seeing, what you're trying to figure out, go from there.
Just a quick question for you. Some of the things you were talking about, well, all of it, but one thing that caught my attention was capture the data of the out-migration and what have you, and the state's doing, or the university's doing a poor job of that. Most of, well, I don't say most of us, a lot of us here are policymakers. So yes, for me, my ask of you is, how do we take the data and information you gave us and convert that into some tangible policy that can help assist you or the universities or what have you, whether that be, and I don't want to get into mandates or requirements, but maybe, I'm just using that as an example. If we require universities to track students 3 years or 4 years post-graduation to find out where they are and do a survey or something. I'm just wondering from a policy perspective, how do we convert the information we just got and use it in some significant way?
Yeah, I think I am making the assumption that I know that based on all the folks that I have known and worked with in the Board of Regents and across the other systems, that these conversations have been taking place. Now, trying to be careful because I came from institutions, and now what I realize is, how do we move things fast? And I think policy can sometimes be a lever to do that if you do it right. Sometimes politicians mess up and blow up some things that are not very well taken by the institutions. That being said, I think that being clear around what data collection process happens at a state level could be a policy effort that takes place. I will also share that there are going to be some federal approaches to this. For a number of years, we've been advocating for the College Transparency Act, which would create that national data set across institutions. And for the first time, it's actually getting bipartisan support. So who does it first, whether it's the state or the feds? I would argue that states probably want to do it first, but it's probably going to be a little bit of both. I see your hand.
Yeah, so Representative Jordan is really hitting on a big point. So let me point you in the direction we already have seen this. In the Budget Reconciliation Act, i.e. the big beautiful bill, there already is language that talks about restricting loans and now even Pell Grants for academic programs that produce what are considered low-income earners. Now, there hasn't been a working definition of what is considered a low-income earner, right? But they're talking about implementing the first, I will call it punitive aspects of it in 2028 or 2029. And so we already see something right now pending before the Louisiana legislature that is, I guess, wants to be the first, but they're not going to be the first because already West Virginia and Indiana have already taken the step. So here's what you have. You have somebody trying to say, we're going to measure you in 2029. We're going to look, we don't know what the academic programs are. We don't know if it's by department, we don't even know what that means, right? And then here's the only thing we know, that from the undergraduate level, you have to produce graduates by program that exceed the median income of high school graduates for your state. For the state of Louisiana, best I can tell, that is about $33,000, $33,500, some dollar amount, right? On the next level, if you have a graduate program, you have to prove that the graduate program produces outcomes for those graduates that exceed the earning potential of undergraduates in the same discipline. We don't even know what that data looks like. So if you take a look at what we just learned here and the previous presentation, here's the issue that we have to deal with. And I'm going to say this to my great President Lamel, who always is forward thinking. I have to think about that. When we look at, for example, the restrictions on loans in some of these programs, here's the advantage we have. Here's what we have to think about going forward. We have low cost programs compared to income potentials. So I was fortunate enough to be in a meeting this past summer with the Association of American Universities. So that's like the top 70 institutions for research, right? And here's what I learned from a session with Senator Cassidy and some other folks. Some of the programs they're really going after are the private schools like a USC. They were showing that USC has some programs that cost $60,000, $70,000 a year. And they can't verify the earnings at the master's level or at the undergraduate level what people earn. All right. So we have to do two things. One, institutions like Southern and Grambling have to be very conscious of what our costs are. We have to take advantage of some legislation that you all have put in the face that allow us to price high cost programs, but find out what the appropriate level is. Okay, we have to do that. We definitely have to do that. And then we also have to recognize, in terms of workforce, we certainly have to take a look at all of our programs and say, you got to determine what the workforce process is. I mean, Cecily, we've been talking about this, workforce Pell. The problem is they're moving along with no definition of what it means. And this is where the midterm elections become very, very important. Because from what I can tell, we have people that are putting out, quote, language, but don't have a definite policy of how you define it. And if you don't have that, then you're really kind of dealing in the dark. You know, so for example, President Lamel, you talked about some things that are happening in nursing and all the different things. There might be a time where Southern and Grambling are going to have to consolidate and operate programs together just from an affordability standpoint. Yep. To keep things affordable, find out what those top priorities are. Now, up here, you have Richland Parish, now Bossier and Caddo. I think you're going to have maybe 4 data centers. I think AI data centers. From what I understand, the biggest pushback is happening in Richland Parish. But there's another opportunity actually in West Feliciana Parish that's going way below everybody's radar. They're building already the data center in West Feliciana. And the opportunity for Grambling and Southern is that with our excess land, we have to work to doing a process where we actually store energy. Because there's going to be a big energy drain in a lot of these parishes. If you think you got blackouts now, when folks start, when they really start figuring out what the energy drain is going to be, that's going to be important. So we've got to be able to create partnerships with entities, SWEPCO, and all those different things. So that's going to require an out-of-the-box thinking process if we figure out what the heck this really means. And I honestly believe the midterm elections are going to determine whether this thing goes forward or not.
Representative Jordan, the UL system did commission a study a year ago where we looked at where our computers were going. We worked with LightCast. We tagged our Pell students who completed and graduated. One of the things I can say pretty proudly is that our system does well with Pell completers. They're earning between $60,000 and $80,000 annually. That's huge. We also tagged our top students. What we learned about top students, they stay in Louisiana. So the conversations we're constantly hearing about out-migration for the UL system, that's not our story. Not only do they stay in Louisiana, they tend to stay in the region. What we've done with the data is, one, we tell our story back. We make sure that when we're talking to you guys, you hear our stories, you understand there's institutional differences, system differences, and how our students are migrating in and out of the state and their regions. The other piece is, we are going to work directly with those academic programs. If we notice that students aren't doing well upon completion, we're going to have different conversations. I would say to everyone in the room that, we have to be careful to talk about things just globally as just one issue. These things differ by institution, region, institutional role, scope, and mission system, and so on. And so we'd be happy to sit down with you and think about policy that we could push forward. But think the first step is starting with it.
No, I agree with that, and it's interesting to know that because most of the time we hear as top students, they take the TOPS fund and then they go to Houston or Dallas or Atlanta or wherever. So, so that is encouraging to know. I still would like to know, even if you differentiated that by race, how does that look as well? And where the out migration is, and if there is a difference, then why that is. I mean, I'm not, the first thing is do no harm, but at the end of the day, if we're getting this data and we're not using it in some tangible way, then I'm not sure what the purpose of gathering.
Okay, and if I could just add one very quick piece to this national conversation around college value, tends to, overwhelmingly skew toward earnings. And then as a result, which programs, which academic programs provide those high level of earnings. I think there's an opportunity for predominantly Black and historically Black colleges to also talk about value for society. And I think that is how we frame that is going to be critical. What does it mean for public health? What does it mean for civic engagement? What does it mean for economic and cultural vitality for our communities? What does it mean for pay equity? What does it mean for public revenues and gross domestic product? You know, and so we've got to be telling the story beyond individual student, gets this much, this is what it means for their socioeconomic value, but really what impact do we have on the community as a whole?
And the only thing I want to add is that, as I perceive it, and I'm pretty sure the Board of Regents is going to come up with their perception. Is it the 239 now that's being proposed, the one that relates to
229.
229? I mean, from what I can tell, I would say that's something we should have opposed. One, because we don't even know what we're dealing with.
We have, I do want to note that, we were not consulted on this bill, and very much so an area of concern that we would like to have a conversation with Representative Weigel on legislative intent and his concerns on these programs and where this is coming from, right? It seems like, based on what Dr. Elton was saying, that this is, and I think you've already hit it on, this is language that's already posed federally, and other states are starting to replicate it. So it seems like that may be the case there, but we definitely have that on our radar as an area of noted concern to have a discussion.
And the one thing that concerned me about his language is that there would be no state dollars allocated to a program based upon a federal deal that talks about financial aid. But when you now talk about no state dollars going to a particular program, that's very dangerous. That's very dangerous, especially when you don't have any kind of data points that you can look to. You can't begin to predict.
It is, and we're based in Indiana, so we've already gone down that road, and we'll have some data on what that actually means in short order.
Dr. Elton, I have a question.
Please.
And it's kind of two-part because it may have to be funded to Louisiana first. I want to know nationally, what have you seen with respect to HBCUs and partnerships that they've done with big industry corporations? For example, as you all know, and if we're perhaps here to talk about it, in Donaldsonville, we went to that groundbreaking for the Hyundai Training Center, right? Have you seen, and I'm not sure if you've heard that, but Hyundai is building a steel plant there in Donaldsonville Parish, and they're partnering with River Parish Community College to have and they just did a groundbreaking on the facility. I want to know, have you seen any HBCUs across the nation do something like that? And then from your perspective, Ms. James, what could our in-state colleges do to have opportunities like that and to get on radars to talk about, to prepare these students for the jobs of tomorrow? Because I think that is an excellent opportunity. And, our institutions like to jump and take a part of opportunity. So I want to know from your in-state perspective, what could they do and what did you see from that perspective? So to you, Dr. Elton, what have you seen nationally and then an in-state focus? Gotcha.
I'll let you start first.
because I also had a similar question, more so on a wider scale as far as what you've seen as far as trends are concerned in other states, but to your, you want me to?
So the PPA
Thank you.
So to answer your question, Louisiana Works is currently partnering directly with, of course, Board of Regents and LTCCS to make sure that, you know, we are identifying those areas where there's opportunity, even more so for HBCUs to kind of be front and center when it comes to various opportunities in careers. I will say this, we are also focusing a lot on like those areas of like skilled, industrial skill, craft trades, things like that. I think for me, from my perspective and where I sit, and I'm kind of still a little new to this arena, what I have noticed and seen and also recommended is tighter relationship from Louisiana Works with HBCUs directly. That we need to have a greater presence within the HBCU system itself. But just also for us, just making sure that the people that we serve, because most people who come to us are receiving some sort of benefits. We're trying to move them from dependence to independence with getting them the necessary skills and training and education to move them into a career path overall. And so just making sure that they have knowledge of those different opportunities, such as Hyundai with River Pasture Schools. We are also in partnership with RPCC. We have partnership through LTCCS with BRCC as well. And so just kind of making sure that we have, you know, better communication amongst ourselves and HBCUs. It just got to be more present as well in those different arenas.
So test, okay. So we are seeing some really good examples of institutions that are doing this work well. Valerie might be dying on this, so I'll just speak up a little bit more. But that Purpose First project that we're talking about, we're always trying to do these initiatives at scale, not a singular institution, because it's so much easier when you're able to align with a system as well as the state government. And so in both Missouri as well as Kentucky, we did statewide Purpose First projects. And the institutions that were involved in that work, Kentucky State, in Missouri, Harris Stowe. Matter of fact, today, the Gates Foundation and the rest of our team is at Harris Stowe talking exactly about this project. And so, you know, people always want to know, how do I build a project like this? And what I continue to tell them is that success begets more success, which begets more resources. And so in some cases, starting small with levels of implementation and then moving into alignment will actually put you on the radar with a number of our corporate partners. I think there is a huge desire. We're actually starting to have a lot of conversations with chambers of commerce and really trying to figure out exactly what they are needing, what the demand looks like, and who they can partner with. And quiet is kept, despite the national agenda related to anti-DEI and everything else. These organizations realize the value in ensuring that they have a more diversified workforce. And so the easiest place for that to partner are with HBCUs. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for that to take place.
If I might, Dr. Elson, I wanted to ask the question as well, because we, with this new administration, incorporated the one door integration, the one door to work, where we focus on those persons who may be receiving some sort of public benefits to giving them access to education and training, ultimately to get them back to work or into a career path that kind of helps lift them up out of poverty. So my question to you is, based off of, you had a slide that dealt with not isolating interventions, which also kind of sounds like our one door project. My question to you is, what other states are using like a positive trend or overall successes that could be states that we could also possibly mirror? I heard you say you were from Indiana. We recently did research, had meetings with Indiana on something else, but I would love to kind of know if there are other states that you're seeing that there's like a positive uptick with the connection between workforce and education and training.
Yeah, and sometimes I only know just enough to be dangerous in these rooms. And so, but we have state alliance engagement directors. And so what I'm happy to do is to kind of talk to our team and figure out who I would put on the Mount Rushmore of states that are doing really good work. But I'm happy to make sure I get that information.
I appreciate it.
Well, I got one more question. And I'm gonna just throw it out there, and I'm not sure if the college has direct, conversations, they use direct conversations, or have heard anything about, how certain donors make selections to certain schools, for example, with the Kinsey Scott Foundation. We do have two of our institutions who are represented on this task force, but they're not here today. And so I don't have the opportunity to ask them, but I wanted to know through any third-party conversations, about the things that they tend to look for, or the trends that you have seen with respect to that.
Yeah, I'm happy to share what we are seeing and learning. And just as a spirit of honesty, we were a recipient as a nonprofit of Mackenzie Scott donation. We did not know how they contacted us. What we ended up finding out was that they have a team behind the scenes that is polling the internet websites, and also hearing from other colleagues who's doing good work. That was literally how they contacted us. It was just, hey, somebody from this particular organization wants to talk to you, and they asked us a question: what would a transformative gift be like, or what would it look like? And surprisingly, when I asked them the question, like, how's this conversation go with many other institutions? It's such a far off, if I were a king or queen for a day kind of question. Most institutions are not prepared to answer that. And so I think number one, you gotta be ready. You have to be prepared to articulate what goals you have that would create a catalytic investment over time. What I will say with regard to other philanthropies is that we're in a very unique situation where when philanthropies have limited resources and they're trying to figure out where do I spend them, the first question they ask us is who is ready? Who's ready? Who do you know has good leadership that will implement these strategies quickly and get the rest of the campus on board? And I can tell you also, in a spirit of candor, that there are a number of institutions that I would not put on that list because in some cases, we can't even get a phone call back. And so I had this conversation literally just last summer with the HBCU Executive Leadership Institute at Clark Atlanta University for emerging college presidents, HBCU presidents. And we were talking exactly about this. What does it look like to have your institution ready? They are reviewing websites. And if they don't have clarity around what your goals are, big ideas and impact, that's going to be a challenge. I would say that participation in programs and projects that might seem small could be the beginning point for a larger investment. And so, really just kind of having a conversation with the staff members and the team members at your institution, that these discussions are happening all the time. And it's not just with the president. In some cases, it might be with the student success officer, et cetera. So, you asked about Mackenzie Scott in particular, but I was surprised in most of the institutions I've talked to that received those gifts. They had no plan. There was no outreach. It was just, we're doing good work and we're promoting it. I don't want to lose sight of that. People have got to get on stages and talk about the impact that they're making whenever they can.
Thank you so much.
One thing that I can point you to is that Dr. Mary Beth Gassman did a study that's published in I think it's University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education, where they talked about some factors and they actually did school by school comparisons. And it's very, very revealing. You might want to check that out. Some work that she did specifically to the gifts that were from Mackenzie Scott.
Anybody else have anything for Dr. Elston? I know we standing between y'all. I'm almost done. Everybody be quiet. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for your presentation and all of the knowledge that you shared. Definitely will continue to be in contact in person because I have a couple of more questions that I have, but we'll talk offline. Thank you so much. All right, I'm gonna move us along. Can y'all hear me better? I know we have some more people in the back. We have some people listening to you, so I just want to make sure y'all can hear me. And I'm gonna go ahead and have a family discussion about the 2026 regular legislative session. And, you know, one of the things that I love so much about this council is that, you know, we have a whole lot of legislators on this council, so we have direct lines of people who can help us at the appointed house in Baton Rouge. So with that being said, I just want to put some dates on everyone's radar, and I know you all have them. I know everyone's staff has these. We've talked with your CFOs. Everyone knows that March 9th, 2026, Monday, the session will convene at noon, and it will go until June 1st, 2026. Budget hearings have been scheduled March 16th, Senate Finance Committee. And March 17th, which is also, and I'll get to that later, that's HBCU Day, so we don't have to play around those times. That is House Appropriations. And so, like I said, our Deputy Commissioner for Finance, Elizabeth Bentley Smith, has been emailing your staff to let you all know to be prepared and make sure that your system presidents are prepared to be in the room to talk about the budget and other items of interest. Next slide. Okay, of course, this isn't an exhaustive list, but what I did want to do, because we have several individuals, several legislators here who can speak to some of these bills as they are authors, or the Board of Regents has worked with them in some type of way on these bills as they have come a part of task forces that the Board of Regents convene. We convene a whole lot of task forces and produce a whole lot of reports. As you all know, we've been convening the Caleb Wilson Hazing Prevention Task Force, which ended, I want to say early January. We have convened the NIL Task Force that went on from about June to December. And then we also convened the Power-Based Violence Review Panel, which has been ongoing since 2021. Dr. Smith here has been convening the Caleb Wilson Hazing Prevention Panel, and then I've done NIL, and I continue to do power-based violence, and I do this panel. So we got a lot of panels, and we got a lot of task forces. So with that, one thing I did want to do is open the floor to the members of the Black Caucus who are here that are offering these bills. The Hazing Prevention Task Force, the Hazing Prevention Bill, this is something that we will be working with Representative LaFleur, Senator Boudreaux, and Senator Price on. They have sat on this task force, and so I want to open the floor for them to give some reflection or some insight on this bill. It does require a lot of training changes, education changes, and they do provide for some additional organizational sanctions as a result of hazing incidents that occur on campus. So I'm open the floor to you, Brett.
I'm really proud of the work that the task force, I'm proud of the work that the task force was able to do on this hazing prevention. It's really important. Certainly, when you get on the other side, if you don't do this work, hopefully we will have your support. I've spoken to a few members because this is personal to a lot of D9 organizations. We intend upon having some meetings with them to explain the process that we will be working through and what these new sort of regulations, if you want to call it, will happen as it relates to hazing prevention. But we look forward to the conversations and the support we hope that we will gain as we go through the process. Senator Price?
Yes, it was very good meetings we had. I think one of the biggest things that came out of it was talking about accountability. And we know, we go back to Max Gruber and that incident at LSU and then Southern University with Caleb Wilson. And it seems as if, like with Max Gruber, it happened and then there was a lot of stuff talked about, bills were passed. And then we had the incident at Southern with the young man Caleb. And we just got to make sure we have accountability. And one of the things that I know is coming with the Attorney General office, there's a bill that's going to be coming to look at some things differently. I know your bill that we're co-authoring with you going to also have some accountability features in it. So I'm looking forward to this session of working, with my colleagues to make sure that we get the message out there that one death is too many. It's way too many, and we're gonna make sure that there's accountability with that. So, we're gonna be working hard. We need everybody's support.
Thank you both so much. Quickly, I'm gonna hit on these two, because Senator Barrow and Rep. Brass aren't here. With the dual enrollment bill, this is something that Rep. Brass is gonna work on. He's been doing a lot of our dual enrollment work, for the last several years and pushing legislation for us to advance dual enrollment, on college campuses. What this will do is create a statewide single application process. The Board of Regents convenes the dual enrollment task force, and this was kind of one of those legislative recommendations asked of the practitioners who do the work, who are boots on the ground, who have to take in every application and, send it every which way, and they wanted a more simplified process. With that being said, I will say for the record, since 2023, the Board of Regents has been piloting a single use application that several institutions have taken advantage of, and we want to make sure that it keeps getting utilized, that it keeps getting, used on campuses. So that's something that we're trying to push for, to work with the management force to come up with a policy to make sure that, institutions have the ability to opt in, so we can continue, having this utilized as a mechanism and a simplified process. I like to say it's an efficiency metric. Next, digital misuse. This comes after the power-based violence review panel that we had back in December. Senator Barrow chairs it, Senator Mizell's on there, and as of most recently, now that the House Select Committee on Women and Children have formed again, Rep. Freiberg is on there, and so is Representative C. Denise Marcel. And the last meeting in December, we had a very robust discussion on how AI sexual generated images have shown up in schools. Particularly, there was an incident, I want to say Parish, where there were some students creating images of each other. Well, of course, Board of Regents deals with colleges and universities, and we have the power-based violence statute that talks about crime, how being sex-based conduct on campus. So we want to make sure that we utilize what's currently on the books in the law, because right now it is in the criminal code that if you generate sexual AI images, that is a criminal offense. We want to make sure that it's covered under the power-based violence. So if that happens to a student, they can go to the Title IX office and report it. And then also one of the things that we want to do is kind of enhance and strengthen trainings and how information gets to students. We know that the Title IX process and the power-based violence process is really daunting and can sometimes be overwhelming. Sometimes some of the websites, you don't know where to go when something traumatizing happens, or you want to get some help. So we're going to work with the institutions and the system to kind of simplify some of that. So that's something that we are working with Senator Barrow on as well.
1.4 is the particular emerging technology we talk about campus. One of the differences I think we're seeing in the higher ed space is the use of like meta glasses and things like that. When people are not aware, they're being recorded, images are being created, things of that sort. So this legislation will also kind of tackle some of that we see in the higher ed space.
Yep. So yeah, we are doing a lot there. And then for these next two items, well, really next three items, I'm gonna turn it over to Rep. Young. Last year, he authored House Resolution 15, which convened the NIL task force, we had some, I will say, off the chain meetings. We had a majority of your athletic directors, especially from the UL system, on the panel. We had two robust representatives from the LHSAA. We had the legend himself, Coach J.C. Curtis, who came to the first meeting out the bat swinging, talking about student protections and how this needs to look and go after 50 years of coaching, and he's still coaching. And I thought he just started. Oh yeah, he's still going. And then we had Dr. Grady Smith from Woodlawn High School, principal of that, and he was very, very forthcoming and very blunt on what he sees, especially with the student population that he serves. And so we had a lot of robust discussion on that topic.
And Master P.
Absolutely. And then we had a couple of members of our board on there. Mr. David Aubrey sat on there. Our chair almost came to every single meeting, Mr. Cordell. And then our other region member, Collins Temple, who you all know used to play basketball at
So we had a really, really well-represented panel on there. So I want to turn it over to Rep. Young to talk about his reflections and some of the bills that's gonna come out this session on NIL.
Yeah, thank you, Bree. Thank you, Bree. As she said, those meetings were really good. I think, that one of the highlights was, Master P came to that last meeting. He's working with UNO, but I think he's also just interested in student protections around NIL in general. But here's what I'll tell you, there will be some legislation coming. You know, high school kids are making more than $100,000 now for playing sports. And so as a state, we're looking to put some protections in there for them. So that's what that first piece is about. The second piece, athletic department funding. We did have athletic directors from just about every institution across the state on that task force. And they sort of explained to us that they've had some challenges in terms of how their departments are funded. And so we're gonna convene a study to see how we can help them out. Last part is high school trust accounts. As I said, you have kids that are under 18 that are, you know, some of them are getting $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 for playing sports. So we found this law that was put into place years ago for child actors. Yeah, the Coogan Act. And basically, they're required to put a certain portion of their earnings into a trust and then be able to access it when they turn 18. So we're gonna try to do something like that. I don't know how far it's gonna go, but we're gonna try that. This is what I want to say to this group. The NIL space is more than just athletes getting paid. So right now, the NCAA is having some conversations about how they're going to deal with eligibility beyond 3 years, beyond 4 years. Because of NIL, kids are staying in colleges longer. And that has a direct impact on the university, that has a direct impact on the community because kids are getting degrees. I mean, the amount of athletes now with master's degrees, if we had some data on it, I would assume it's probably higher than what it's been because they don't want to go pro. I mean, why would you go to the NFL or the NBA and make $200,000 when you're making $1 million in college?
Right.
And that helps to have a direct impact on the bottom line of our universities. The other thing I would say to Chancellor Pierre and Chancellor Washington, there are some learning opportunities for law schools as well as the College of Business and Entrepreneurship. These kids are having to deal with marketing, they're having to deal with contracts, they're having to deal with agents. And so right now, athletic departments have positions where they're trying to help these kids out with those things, but it's LSU is the only one that has the funding for it. All of our other universities don't really have the money for it. So there will be opportunities for, like I say, the law school, Grambling. I know we are the sort of the patriarch of HBCU football in the state.
I know. See, you can only say that because we in his home.
Notwithstanding that, we've had some great conversations with AD Roman Banks at Southern, and he's really interested in partnering with the College of Business and Entrepreneurship and law schools on some of this. The other thing Regent Aubrey brought up was that some of these kids, a lot of them are not going to get the $100,000 deals. A lot of them, the average deal is probably, somewhere under $5,000, but they still come with tax implications. Because I think if it's over $600, there's some tax implications. There's some contracting implications. So where do they go to get this help? And Regent Aubrey talked about considering how we look at doing some sort of free NIL resource center. I know we have the, president of Mel is doing a wonderful job over here. I know we have the Doug Williams Center over here. It may be something that, you know, you want to look at partnering and creating some sort of free NIL resource center. The last thing I will say, NIL, offers the opportunity for our universities to enter into holistic partnerships with business. Because if you can get a company that wants to give a kid a $10,000, $15,000 NIL deal, you can probably get that company to do more for your university. Because those deals are not just about money; they're about advertising, they're about marketing, and so I would encourage universities to look at it from a holistic perspective. But keep an eye on the legislation that we're going to bring. I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of pushback. I know Chairman Jordan, who's probably one of the best attorneys I've met, he picks every bill apart. He just picked the bill apart and told me what was wrong with it. So we're open to amendments on the bill, but I do want to thank Bree and the team at Regents for staffing and hosting that task force. They were really helpful. And let me say this too: the Attorney General's office just created their own NIL department. So the HBCU task force, we always get left behind. Don't get left behind. Other folks are moving on this. Don't think it's just about kids getting paid. It's much, much bigger than that. So I'll be happy to speak to you guys more about it one-on-one if you want to talk about it. Thank you.
Well, so I know I got a bill that's not on here, but let me first start by saying I do think, because I did have an NIL bill years ago, and they ended up passing another bill. But what I will say is, as it relates to Asian and NIL, I do think it's important that these bills are authored by African Americans. I think it's going to be incumbent upon us not to let our bills get hijacked by other folks, not just for the purpose of taking credit. I think it's also for the purpose of how that bill is structured and it really reaching its real intent. Because especially on this NIL bill, I mean, this is affecting African American kids more than anybody else, disproportionately affecting them. So, but I have a bill that's not on that. It was late filed, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it here. A few years ago, working with a suicidologist on another matter, discussion came up that we've had an uptick in suicides amongst our African American population, especially our young folks. So 4 years ago, we created a task force that dealt with that. We completed that task force this year. We got some recommendations coming out. We did it in conjunction with LDH and the Nelson Mandela School of Public Policy over at Southern. Dr. Charmaine Williams led that charge. We came up with some good information, but one of the most difficult things we had is no universities report this data. So one of the things that I have a bill that's coming up will require universities to track suicides that either happen within the student population or even off campus, even if it happens off campus. So that's one of the things that we're going to do. But I'd also be remiss to say that the initial study that was done the first year was led by Dr. Williams, but Dr. Segura played a significant role in collecting that data as well. And so I just want to highlight not only the legislators that we have that's doing great work, but other folks within the room that's doing great work to help us move our agenda forward. So that'll be another bill to look at. Thank you so much.
We have another page of bills and
Let me say one thing I left out. I had it on my list of things to talk about with NIL. Women's sports. NIL may be the single greatest engine to create equity in women's sports and men's sports. There have been conversations about why professional women's sports don't get paid like the professional men's sports. NIL is the tool that's going to take care of that. So if you're interested in women's sports, basketball, softball, volleyball, pay attention to what's going on in the NIL sports.
I just wanted to make, okay, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to say that while you were speaking, Dr. Marlon Dixon, who is the Vice Chancellor for Strategic Planning and other things at the Law Center, and she's also the unofficial chief of staff for yeah. I told her, I said, you know, John Pierre is your husband, and I'm your side. You know. She works for both of us, but so she sent me something that is consistent with what you were talking about in that area. The Southern University Law Center and Southern University will be hosting a sports pathway academy in June. And it's gonna bring students together to talk about NIL and things related to that. So we are exploring that as a concentration at the Law Center.
Yes, sir.
And so in fact, we did have a conversation with Master P at Pelican basketball game about coming and talking to our students. We have some graduates who represent athletes, and so yeah, we understand that we do need to be involved in that. And then when you was talking about the suicide thing, I was in the restroom and I saw where Grambling has a poster up, 988 suicide and crisis outline. Lifeline. And I'm gonna talk to the president about that because, you know, the law students, we haven't had anybody to commit suicide, but they are very stressed out. They have the traditional issues that other campuses have, and so we do need a resource. And so I took a picture, Mr. President. I don't know if y'all paying for this or not. Huh?
I don't know, follow with, we can get some.
Yeah, I'm gonna contact these people though, because they got a QR code on here, so it's easy for students to access the assistance that they need. They can text, they can call. There's multiple ways to get some assistance when they are experiencing some type of crisis. So two good things were said that we're gonna take advantage of while we are up here.
Okay, so the other hat I wear is I also work on the mental health piece as a Board of Regents. So one of the interesting things is that Louisiana's public institutions, none of them receive funding for mental health specific. So they're all kind of piecing together mental health support, so that looks very different on every campus. But to your point about 988, that is a initiative, a national initiative, but we can get you all some free posts through the Louisiana Department of Health. They have tons of free resources, things like that, that we can get provided to your institutions. The Southern University Human Jukebox did a contract with them 2 years ago for Value Classic, doing it, spelling out on the field, all of those things. But one of the pieces, we have, LSU is the only institution in the state that has a full-on sports psychology and counseling department that provides student athlete mental health resources, things of that sort. But they have an incredible resource there, Dr. Lakeitha Poole, who works with our office, who we have a liaison at all the institutions in the state on things like mental health, who would be happy to get together. We can put together a free training for all the institutions to come to for mental health support specific to student athletes. We can easily get that put together. She's incredible. She's worked with the Golden, she has a national championship ring with the Golden State Warriors, but she worked on their mental health and sports performance team the last year they won the title. So we have some great resources where we can provide that service free to all the institutions across the state. But we are also working at the Board of Regents to provide an additional $25,000 to each of the campuses in the next month or two to provide additional funding for mental health supports. Because again, there is no statewide funding that's allocated to the institutions for mental health. About 2 years ago, we received some funding from the Department of Health. That funding has pretty much been exhausted, but it was transformative on a lot of campuses where they were able to either get short-term professional service contracts to get the wait time down, or get a telehealth service on their campus where students can access it, or they could soundproof their counseling room so that you wouldn't hear another person's session. So we will be engaging with our legislature. We're always happy to take any money you all find in the corner.
And I'm gonna say this before I get to the next slide and wind up wrapping it up and getting everybody out of here. I will say, for anyone who is specifically interested in these subject matter categories, we put out reports. They ain't 100 pages, but between me and Allison, our reports get straight to the point. We have a very comprehensive NIL report. It talks about, there's tax implications. If we got a link that goes directly to the IRS website that says students have to pay taxes on any NIL earned, because that is something important that they need to know. We got power-based violence review panel.
report. I've literally finalized the new report right now. That'll be out on Saturday. And then we have the hazing report as well. So if you want a quick glimpse into the subject matter to know what's going on with the recommendations, or I'll email that to you.
Yes.
Next slide. Super quick, I don't have it listed, but of course, I'm going to talk about some of the bills and some of the things that we're hearing from what I like to call the street committee that I wanted everybody to be aware of. I don't know, but street committee talks. When we talk about other areas of interest and some things that we've heard, and I'm quite sure a lot of you have all heard, there's a great specific interest in TOPS. How is it serving the students? Some legislators feel as if TOPS isn't being utilized to its full potential. Like people have mentioned, where there's something that the state pays for and then students will leave and go to other states. So there is an interest in some conversations that we heard about TOPS. We heard people that may want to turn TOPS into a loan program. They have tried that since 2001, I want to say up until maybe 2025 or 2024, right? On both sides of the political aisle. Both Republicans and Democrats have tried to turn it into something, and we heard that they will try to do it again. There is going to be a TOPS study resolution just to kind of look at the full picture of TOPS. How is it serving the students? How is it in the best interest of the state? How is it aligned with workforce and what we need? There is something about MJ Foster that would be in the works. MJ Foster money, the Board of Regents comes to the legislature every year and we say that we need money for MJ Foster. It is being heavily utilized, so much that we only got $800 left in the bank because everybody uses MJ Foster. And as you may remember, a couple of years ago, one of your colleagues had a bill, got it passed to open up MJ Foster to other student age group populations when it was originally intended for those who are 21 and older, for adult populations, because we want to get them back to the educational fold. So we need to tighten that up a little bit because the funding, as I said, is running out and is being heavily utilized, which is great. We will be mindful of those dollars. You all may have already seen there are a couple of other bills. There is a bill to allow guns on public post-secondary campuses whereby management boards or the Board of Regents can make any type of policy on that. I will say from what we've heard, there are a lot of concerns. We've heard of the concerns. And so, we will continue to monitor that. And then also, as of yesterday, there's also a bill to get rid of us. So, there's a lot going on at the legislature this year. And at the end of the day, they got in. But we will continue, as we continue to engage with you all. I call a lot of you all on this task force very regularly. I will be contacting some of you and make sure that you're all informed and that, what we're tracking. What bills of interest we're watching, and so more to stay tuned on that.
And also, there's another bill that's not directly with education, but it impacts the boards and taking away the requirement of them having to have the sexual harassment trainings. And the law right now says public servants, but it's going to be changed to public officials and then just elected officials. So with the wording, it takes away appointed board members, because it's just focusing on electeds. And we know we've had an issue, not with our great institutions, thank you, but there have been some other college campuses where there's been issues of sexual harassment. You don't think it's important enough to train your board members in sexual harassment? Will it be important enough for those board members to hold the schools accountable when there's reports of sexual harassment by their students or teachers? That's where my mind went with it. So that's something else that we should be concerned about with the makeup and the look of these boards for some of these universities now.
Anyone else? Well, we'll continue to make sure that you all are up to date and continue to have discussions, especially throughout the legislative session on things that we've seen. as bills are being filed, bill that, the draft request guideline was just the other day, so bills are continuing dropping into the website. And so I'm refreshing the page every 15 seconds to see what's all up in there. So we will continue to have conversations and make sure this task force, as well as our legislators, are up to date. That we want you to be aware of. With that being said, I want to ask Dr. Smith, have any public comment cards been turned in? No. All right, thank you. So, next slide. Yep, about to get up, sorry. All right, so last but not least, I just want to let you all know, next meeting will be HBCU Day at the Capitol. It's a very quick turnaround. We like to have it early in the legislative session because we want to make sure that you all have the opportunity to attend before committee meetings start getting, scheduled and very. So HBCU Day is going to be March 17th, 2026. I will give you more information, make sure your institutions are prepared and know what they have to bring, especially for the celebration that we regularly have. And so with that being said, now I'll send you more details. Is there a motion to adjourn? All right. All right. Is there a second? Yeah. All right. And that we are adjourned.
That's ready to go, without saying, ready to go.
Pleasure sitting. Yeah.